Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. What you continually think, you eventually believe. And what you believe, you act upon. If you constantly feed your mind with doubt, scarcity, and fear, your life will mirror it. But if you plant thoughts of abundance, discipline, and purpose, your habits and your bank account will grow accordingly. Fear is the enemy that whispers in your ear when opportunity knocks. Wherever you find someone stuck, stalled, paralyzed in their financial life, dig a little, and you'll often find fear running the show. I used to be that man. I clung to every dollar as if it were sacred. Not because I had a financial plan, but because I was scared. Scared to lose it, scared to try, scared to be wrong. I waited for perfect conditions, the sure deal, the guarantee. But life doesn't hand out guarantees, it hands out chances. And the man who needs a guarantee will never move, never build, never create. He'll wade himself into regret. It wasn't until I changed how I thought about money that things started to change for me. I had to stop thinking of money as something to preserve and start thinking of it as something to plant. A tool, a seed. You don't keep seeds in your pocket. You put them in the ground. Yes, some won't grow, but what's the alternative? Hold them tight and wait for them to magically turn into a harvest? That's not how nature works, and it's not how wealth works either. You see, positive thinkers, those who build wealth, they don't need perfect information or perfect timing. They need vision, strategy, and a little courage. They understand that every investment, every idea, every opportunity carries a measure of risk. But they also know that risk, when it's calculated and courageous, is the price of reward. And more than that, they understand that confidence isn't built by avoiding mistakes, it's built by facing uncertainty and moving forward anyway. Confidence compounds. Every small risk taken, whether it pays off or not, adds another layer of self-trust. And that self-trust becomes magnetic. People follow those who believe in themselves. Money follows those who know what to do with it. Opportunities seek those who are willing to act. Now, I'm not talking about recklessness. That's not bravery. That's blindness. I'm talking about intelligent risk. Risk that's thought through, planned out, backed by education, and a hunger to grow. I'm talking about the kind of risk that comes after you've studied the market, learned the skill, built the habit, and made the decision to step forward. Even then, there's no guarantee, but there is growth. And over time, the person who takes enough smart steps ends up far ahead of the one who waited for certainty. Let me tell you what I learned from my mentor. He said, if you risk nothing, you risk everything. At first, I didn't get it. But over time, I understood the person who refuses to risk will never know what he's capable of. He'll never unlock his potential, never rise above survival, never tap into that reservoir of creativity and strength that only shows up when you stretch. Playing it safe is the fastest way to live a small, forgettable life. If you're afraid to lose, you've already lost. If you're afraid to move, you've already settled. And if you're waiting for the right moment, let me tell you, it's already here. The right moment is the moment you decide to think differently, act boldly, and let your fear become your fuel. Because when fear no longer controls you, poverty can no longer keep you. And that's the moment wealth begins. I used to think complaining was just venting. You know, a little harmless talk about how unfair things were, the taxes too high, the boss too controlling, the economy too slow. But here's what I discovered after watching thousands of people go nowhere in life. Complaining is the signature of a poor mindset. It doesn't build anything, fix anything, or solve anything. It just drains your energy and wastes your time, and time is a currency far too expensive to throw away like that. Now let me be honest. Life isn't fair. That's not breaking news. Prices go up. Governments make decisions we don't agree with. People get promoted who shouldn't. And sometimes even when you work hard, you don't get what you deserve. But that's not the point. The point is what you do next. Because while one man complains about the weather, another man figures out how to plant in spite of it. While one woman moans about the job market, another woman learns a new skill and builds her own door. Same conditions, different mindset. You see, complaining gives you the illusion of movement without actually moving. You feel like you're doing something because your mouth is working, but your feet aren't going anywhere. The energy it takes to complain, to point fingers, to assign blame, to gather an audience for your misery is the same energy it takes to get better. You can't do both. You can either complain or improve, but not both at the same time. I had to learn that the hard way. When I was broke, I had a list of excuses. Too many bills. No support. The system is rigged. It was a long list, and I could recite it well. But none of those excuses paid the rent. None of them wrote a check. None of them got me closer to freedom. One day I looked in the mirror and realized something that changed my life. No one was coming to rescue me. The government wasn't going to fix my finances. My boss wasn't going to suddenly double my income. If I was going to have more, I had to become more. And to become more, I had to stop complaining and start learning. Wealth-minded individuals don't waste their time yelling at the storm. They study the patterns, find the opportunities, and build better boats. They adapt, they read, they adjust. They say, yes, this is difficult, and now what? They focus on the part they can control themselves, their attitude, their skill set, their decisions. They understand that while they can't control all the events, they can absolutely control the effort. And that distinction makes all the difference. Let me tell you something that might sting a little. No one wants to partner with a complainer. No investor wants to back someone who's always explaining why things don't work. No customer wants to buy from someone who's constantly frustrated. Energy is contagious, and wealth flows toward clarity, responsibility, and resolve. If your language is laced with negativity, your results will be too. Now, I'm not saying ignore problems. What I'm saying is this: trade whining for wisdom. Every complaint is a signal. Instead of repeating it out loud, use it to ask better questions. Why is this happening? What can I learn? How can I improve? Where's the opportunity others are missing? That kind of thinking turns obstacles into openings. And remember this: every minute spent complaining is a minute stolen from building your better future. Discipline, learning, skill building, these are investments. Complaining is a tax on your time, and it never gives you a refund. So the next time you feel tempted to point fingers, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, what can I do right now with what I have where I am? Because that's where wealth begins, not in better conditions, but in better decisions. One of the most overlooked secrets to success is this: your mental environment is just as critical as your financial one. If you surround yourself with trash, you're going to think like trash. If you fill your mind with limitation, you will live in limitation. That's not theory, that's law. Your mind is like a garden. It doesn't care what you plant. It will return weeds just as faithfully as it returns tomatoes. But here's the thing: what you plant and what you allow in determines what grows. So the question is, who's doing the planting? In my early days, I wasn't just broke financially. I was broke mentally. I was hanging around people who had no ambition, no vision, no drive. You know the type. They always had something sarcastic to say. Always had a joke about how only the rich get richer, or money isn't everything. They laughed at big goals, and they hated people who made it out. And for a while, I absorbed all of that. I didn't just hear it, I believed it. And as a result, my life mirrored the thinking I adopted. Small, bitter, defensive, poor. Then one day I met a mentor who told me, you can't afford to be casual about what enters your mind. Garbage in, garbage stays. He told me to look at my bookshelf. What was I feeding my mind with? I had to be honest. Not much. Some entertainment, maybe a sports magazine, a newspaper filled with bad news, but nothing that challenged me, stretched me, lifted me. He said, if you want to change your income, change your input. And that's what I did. I changed my mental diet. I started reading books that expanded my vision. I listened to tapes. Remember tapes? That taught principles of wealth, of mindset, of habits. I stopped giving my evenings to the same tired conversations and started investing them in learning, writing, setting goals. Slowly, the thoughts in my head began to change. And When my thinking changed, so did my behavior. And when my behavior changed, so did my income. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. Here's the truth. Your external world is a reflection of your internal one. If you've got poverty in your bank account, I'd bet there's poverty in your belief system too. But here's the good news. Beliefs can be changed. Environments can be redesigned. Minds can be reprogrammed. And that starts with a simple decision. To take ownership of your mental space like your life depends on it, because it does. So look around. Who do you talk to daily? What do they talk about? Are they lifting your standards or lowering your ceiling? Do they talk about ideas or gossip, solutions or complaints, growth or excuses? You may need to love some people from a distance, not because you're better than them, but because you can't afford to let their limited thinking become your future. Association is powerful. If 5 of your closest friends are broke, unmotivated, and negative, guess who's going to be number 6? And it's not just people, it's content. It's what you scroll through, what you listen to, what you dwell on. Every bit of input is shaping your expectations, and expectations shape your actions. So guard your mind like you would guard a vault. Not everything deserves access. Now hear me, wealth isn't just built in the bank. It's built in your belief about what's possible. You have to believe it's available, that it's attainable, that it's worth it. And that belief grows in rich soil books, goals, mentors, challenges, environments that force you to stretch. If you want to grow wealth, grow yourself first. And if you want to grow yourself, start with what you're feeding your mind. Change the soil, and you'll change the fruit. One of the greatest tragedies in life is not aiming too high and missing, but aiming too low and hitting. You see, negative thinking doesn't just kill hope, it compresses your entire future into a box that's too small to live in. It shrinks your vision until all you can see is the obstacle in front of you and nothing beyond it. And let me tell you something, no man ever built wealth staring only at what is. You build wealth by seeing what can be, by stretching your imagination far beyond your circumstances, and then working to meet that vision. I've watched it time and again. A person with a poor mindset walks into a room and sees problems. A person with a wealth mindset walks into the same room and sees opportunity. Same room, same facts, different filters. Why? Because the negative thinker has trained their mind to look down, to fixate on limitations, restrictions, dangers. They wait for perfect conditions before they act, so they never act. They're trapped in today and therefore never own tomorrow. But positive thinking opens doors that don't yet exist. It's not wishful thinking, it's constructive thinking. It's the discipline of asking better questions. Instead of saying, I can't afford that, you ask, how can I earn more to make that possible? Instead of, this is impossible, you say, what would have to be true to make it possible? It's not fantasy. It's vision backed by strategy. And that's a very different game. In my early years, my dreams were small because my thinking was small. I just wanted to pay the bills, just wanted to make ends meet. But then I met people whose thinking was on another level entirely. They weren't just paying bills, they were building businesses. They weren't just making ends meet, they were buying assets. They weren't just working jobs, they were creating freedom. And I realized the difference wasn't intelligence, it was vision. They were thinking bigger, and their thinking gave them permission to live bigger. So I made a decision. I would expand my vision until it no longer fit the man I was. I would stretch it until it demanded I become someone new. That's how growth happens. That's how wealth happens. You set a goal that forces you to rise. You paint a picture of the life you want, not the one you're stuck in, and then you go to work. That's the key. Vision must be backed by action. Because vision without work is just a dream, but vision with work becomes destiny. Here's something practical I did. I started writing down goals that scared me a little. Not goals that were easy, not goals that kept me comfortable, but goals that required me to learn, to improve, to risk, to stretch. I told myself, if the goal doesn't challenge who I am today, it won't change who I am tomorrow. And each time I hit a goal, I didn't stop. I set a bigger one. Because the point wasn't just to get what I wanted. The point was to grow into someone who could create more at will. Now, don't get me wrong. Positive thinking doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you acknowledge reality, but you don't stop there. You build on it. You use it. You say, yes, this is where I am, and it's not where I have to stay. That's power. That's freedom. That's the beginning of wealth. So take a look at your vision. Does it excite you? Does it scare you? Does it stretch you? Or is it so small you could reach it without growing an inch? Because if your vision doesn't make you uncomfortable, it's not worthy of your potential. And if your thinking can't hold the future you want, it's time to upgrade it, because you'll never build a big life with a limited mind. Now, let's get to the real test of your thinking, your habits. Because thinking is only the start of transformation. What you do consistently is what shapes your destiny. I've always said, if you want to know where someone is headed, don't look at their goals, look at their daily routine. That's the trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to their future. Wealth isn't just a target you hit, it's a lifestyle you build, one small daily choice at a time. In my early years, I read all the right ideas, I listened to the tapes, I even got inspired, but nothing really changed until I changed what I did day by day. It wasn't some grand breakthrough. It was the slow, steady adoption of small, smart behaviors that compounded over time. And I'll tell you, those little changes did more for my bank account than any motivational talk ever could. One of the first habits I built was tracking every single dollar I spent. Not just the big expenses, every coffee, every snack, every little leak in the financial pipe. And I wasn't doing it to punish myself. I was doing it to gain awareness. Because what you don't measure, you can't master. After 30 days of tracking, I realized something important. I didn't have an income problem, I had a management problem. I was leaking wealth through the cracks of unconscious spending. And when I sealed those cracks, my money started to behave better because I was behaving better. Another habit I installed was reading 10 pages a day of a wealth-building book. 10 pages doesn't sound like much. But over the course of a year, that's over 3,500 pages, the equivalent of about 15 to 20 full-length books. Now think about what kind of person you become when you absorb 20 new perspectives on money, investing, discipline, and success in a single year. That's not just knowledge, that's transformation. Then I committed to a third simple habit. Before I spent a dime, I invested 10% of my income, not saved, invested. Money saved is just money waiting to be used. But money invested is money working. And when your money works harder than you do, you start to feel a shift. That habit alone, paying myself, first taught me more about ownership and responsibility than any seminar. It told my future self, I've got your back. Now I know what some people say, I don't have enough to invest. But that's not the truth, that's a mindset problem. If you can buy a $6 coffee, you can buy $6 of stock. If you can pay for streaming services, you can fund your own financial freedom. It's not about the amount, it's about the identity. Are you someone who consumes or someone who builds? That's what habits reveal. And it's not just about financial habits, it's about time habits, thinking habits, emotional habits. What do you do when you feel discouraged? What do you do when you succeed? Do you reward yourself with laziness or reinvest in your growth? These micro decisions add up. Wealth doesn't show up overnight. It's the interest earned on years of wise routines. Now, I'll give you something you can do today. Pick one daily wealth habit and start it immediately. Don't wait for the first of the month or a clean slate. Today is clean enough. Whether it's tracking your spending, reading 10 pages, investing a small percentage, or reviewing your goals before bed, do something. Not someday, today. Because discipline doesn't care about motivation. Discipline just asks, did you show up? If you build small, smart habits and stay with them, you'll look up in a year and barely recognize your life, not because luck showed up, but because you did. Let me tell you something. Important failure is not the enemy. Far from it. Failure is a teacher, a guide, a necessary stepping stone on the road to wealth. But here's the catch. How you treat failure determines whether it destroys you or develops you. The poor mindset runs from failure. It hides, it excuses, it blames. But the wealthy mindset leans in, studies the wreckage, and turns every setback into a study session. Early in my life, I had some big failures. I lost money on investments I didn't fully understand. I launched products that nobody wanted. I made decisions based on hope, not on clear-eyed analysis. At first, I felt crushed. I wanted to quit. But then I realized something crucial. Every failure carried a lesson hidden in plain sight, if I was willing to look. Instead of retreating emotionally, I started to document those lessons. I wrote them down in a notebook I called my lesson log. It became one of my most valuable tools. Whenever a plan didn't work, I'd ask myself, what went wrong? What did I overlook? What was missing from my approach? I became like a scientist studying an experiment. I didn't judge or punish myself. I just gathered data. And over time, those notes became a roadmap, a way to avoid the same pitfalls again, and to sharpen my strategy. Think about it. Every wealthy person you admire has failed at some point. The difference is they didn't stay down, they didn't drown in regret or blame, they turned their failures into feedback. They learned to treat setbacks as tuition fees paid for their education and success. It's not the fall that defines you, it's the getting up with new wisdom in your pocket. This mindset turns fear upside down. Instead of fearing failure, you learn to value it, because failure tells you what not to do next time. It shows you the weak spots in your plan, the gaps in your knowledge, the attitudes that need adjusting. When you study your setbacks, you make them work for you. You turn losses into lessons and mistakes into mastery. Let me give you a practical step. Start your own lesson log. After any disappointment, whether a failed sale, a missed opportunity, or a bad investment, write down what happened without judgment. Then write the 3 most important lessons you can take away. Be honest, be specific. Over time, review your log regularly. You'll see patterns, improvements, and progress you didn't notice before. And remember, this process builds resilience. When failure becomes data, you stop taking it personally. You detach your identity from the outcome and focus on the process. That's how confidence grows, not by never failing, but by learning faster and better than the competition. In the end, wealth isn't about avoiding failure. It's about learning faster than others. It's about accumulating wisdom, and wisdom compounds just like money does. The richer your lesson log, the richer your future. So when life throws you off course, don't retreat. Don't complain. Don't give up. Lean in. Open your notebook and ask, what can I learn here? Because every failure studied becomes a stepping stone to success. That's how wealth grows, lesson by lesson, failure by failure, day by day. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned on my journey to success was simple but profound. Success leaves clues. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or wander aimlessly hoping for a breakthrough. The path to wealth and fulfillment has been walked by many before you, and all you have to do is study those who have what you want. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants when you understand their habits, their mindset, their daily routines. You can climb much higher and faster than if you start from scratch. Think about it this way. If you want to build a great business, don't just guess what works. Look at the companies that have succeeded. If you want to build wealth, don't just hope for luck. Study the investors who have mastered the game. If you want to grow in wisdom and influence, observe the habits of people who are admired for those qualities. Early in my career, I made the mistake of trying to do everything my own way. I thought I had to figure it all out by myself. That cost me time, money, and frustration. Then I realized I was ignoring the greatest shortcut available, modeling. I started seeking out people who had the life I desired, paying close attention not just to what they achieved, but how they achieved it. I watched their daily habits when they woke up, how they planned their day, how they spent their time. I listened to what they read and the way they spoke. I studied how they handled setbacks, how they kept their focus sharp, how they maintained discipline, and I asked myself, what am I missing? What habits do they have that I don't? By breaking down their routines, I found that success was less about extraordinary talent and more about consistent, intentional daily habits. They invested time in learning every day. They didn't wait for motivation. They created momentum through discipline. They approached failure as a lesson, not a verdict. They built their wealth by thinking long-term and serving others. These weren't lucky people, they were deliberate. Modeling is a faster path than guessing. When you try to blaze your own trail without a map, you waste precious energy on trial and error. But when you find mentors, books, and resources that show you the blueprint, you accelerate your progress. You avoid common mistakes, and you gain confidence knowing that these methods have been tested and proven. This approach goes beyond copying behavior. It's about understanding mindset and values. It's about learning the philosophy behind their success, their belief in growth, their respect for time, their willingness to embrace discomfort for a greater reward. So, here's a practical step for you. Start creating a list of people who have achieved what you want. It could be entrepreneurs, investors, writers, leaders, anyone who embodies the success you aspire to. Then study them like a detective. Read their books, listen to their interviews, observe their habits, write down the routines and mindsets they follow. Try adopting one new habit from this list each month. Maybe it's reading for 30 minutes a day, journaling your goals each morning, or setting aside focused work time. Notice how these small changes build over time. Remember, your success is not a mystery, it's a formula. And that formula is written by those who came before you. Success leaves clues. If you want to find wealth, start following those clues with intention and patience. Because when you model the right people, you don't just learn to succeed, you learn to succeed faster, smarter, and with greater purpose. And that's the kind of growth that changes your life. I want to share something that's simple, in words, but profound in impact. Building wealth is not about appearances. Too often people get caught up in the illusion of wealth, the shiny car, the big house, the fancy gadgets, and mistake those things for actual wealth. But the truth is, those things don't build wealth. They erode it. They're expenses disguised as status symbols. I remember early on in my life, when I first started earning more, I was tempted by the flashy lifestyle. I thought, if I want to show success, I have to look successful. I bought things that impressed others but didn't add to my financial foundation. What I didn't realize then was that a car, for example, loses value the moment you drive it off the lot. It's called depreciation. The same goes for many other possessions. They take your money and they give back less, or sometimes nothing at all. True wealth, on the other hand, comes from building assets. Assets are things that put money back into your pocket, that grow in value over time. Stocks, real estate, businesses, intellectual property, these are the vehicles of wealth creation. They might not be as flashy at first, but they build your future. They are the bricks and mortar of financial freedom. So before you make any big purchase, ask yourself a simple but crucial question. Does this take me closer to freedom, or does it just look like it? If the answer is the latter, then hold off. Your money is a tool, and it should be wielded carefully. If it's going towards something that will decrease in value or simply drain your resources, you're working for your possessions instead of having your possessions work for you. I've met many people who earn good money but find themselves living paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because they focus more on looking wealthy than becoming wealthy. They spend on things that provide temporary pleasure but no long-term return. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes in it. No matter how much water you pour in, it never stays full. Building wealth requires patience and discipline. It requires seeing beyond the immediate gratification of buying a new toy and focusing instead on the slow but steady growth of your assets. That might mean investing in the stock market, saving for a down payment on rental property, or putting time into building a side business that generates passive income. I recall a time when I started buying books and attending seminars instead of new cars or expensive dinners. Those investments in my knowledge and mindset paid off exponentially. They became assets that no one could take away from me. And over time, they led to real financial freedom. It's also about protecting what you've built. Don't be fooled by the temptation to inflate your lifestyle faster than your wealth grows. Live below your means, save aggressively, and reinvest in your future. That's the hallmark of those who succeed over the long haul. Remember, wealth is not a trophy to display for others. It's a foundation to build your life on your own terms. So when you think about your next big purchase, ask yourself if you're trading your freedom for a fleeting image or if you're planting a seed that will grow into lasting prosperity. The path to real wealth is often quiet and humble, but it's steady and sure, and it will take you places appearances never can. Choose assets over illusions. Build wealth that lasts. I want to talk about something that's close to my heart, building something of your own. You see, working a job means you're building someone else's dream. Every hour you work, every task you complete, it's their vision you're helping realize. But what about your vision? What about your dream? Early in my life, I realized that if I truly wanted financial freedom, if I wanted to create lasting wealth, I couldn't rely solely on a paycheck. I had to think bigger. I had to build something that belonged to me, that something might start small, but it must be yours. It could be a product, a service, a business, or even a content platform like writing, speaking, or teaching. The point is to create value that you own and control. Many people get stuck waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect business idea, the perfect product, the perfect market conditions. I'm here to tell you, that moment rarely comes. If you wait for perfect, you'll never start. The wealthy mind doesn't wait for clarity or perfection. It starts messy, learns fast, and refines quickly. The road to success is rarely a straight line. It's full of trial and error, but those who keep moving forward eventually find their way. When I first started, I didn't have all the answers. I had more questions than solutions. But I began, I created, I offered, I served. With every step, I learned something new. Maybe your first attempt won't be perfect, but it will be your foundation. You'll make mistakes, sure, but those mistakes are your best teachers. Building your own enterprise, even on a small scale, changes your mindset in profound ways. You stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. You begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles. You develop resilience and creativity. Your focus shifts from trading time for money to creating systems that work for you. One practical approach is to identify a simple product or service you can offer on the side while still working your job. It might be something related to your skills or passions. It doesn't need to be complicated or perfect. It just needs to start. Once you begin, you'll find ways to improve and expand. I've seen countless examples where people start with a simple blog, a small consulting service, or even selling handcrafted goods. Over time, those small beginnings grow into full-time businesses that provide financial independence and personal fulfillment. The key is action and persistence. Remember, wealth is built by owning systems, not by renting your time. When you build something of your own, you are planting seeds for long-term growth. You create value that doesn't vanish when you stop working. That's how fortunes are made and legacies created. So don't wait for the perfect conditions or the perfect idea. Start now, start small, start imperfect, build something that is yours. That messy, imperfect beginning is the foundation of your financial future. You own your dream. Begin building it today. I want to talk about something most people don't think about early enough. The idea of legacy. When I say legacy, I don't mean just the things you leave behind when you're gone. I mean the lasting impact of your life, how your thoughts, actions, and values echo beyond your own timeline. And here's the truth. The wealthy don't simply focus on making it through today or next year. They think in generations. Early on in my journey, I realized that wealth isn't just about the money sitting in your bank account or the assets you accumulate. Real wealth is about creating something that lasts long after you're gone, something that your children, grandchildren, or even community can benefit from. This kind of thinking changes everything. It shifts your focus from short-term gains to long-term value. The poor mindset is often caught in survival mode. How do I make it through this week? How do I pay these bills? There's nothing wrong with survival. It's necessary. But if survival is your only goal, your vision stays small. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes, constantly patching but never getting ahead. Wealthy people build buckets with no holes. They think about how to make their buckets bigger, stronger, and how to pass them on. When I started out, I didn't have much, but I had a vision. I asked myself, what do I want to leave behind? I knew I wanted more than just a bank balance. I wanted to create a foundation for future generations' knowledge, principles, habits, values that could guide them when I'm no longer here. Building a legacy begins with small habits and choices every day. It's about learning continuously and then teaching what you learn. It's about saving and investing wisely, not just for yourself, but to create a foundation your family can build on. It's about cultivating discipline, integrity, and a strong work ethic that your children see and internalize. These invisible assets, character, and wisdom are the most valuable inheritance you can pass on. You might say, but I'm just starting out. I don't have much to leave. That's exactly why you need to start now. Legacy thinking is not reserved for the wealthy or the elderly. It's for anyone willing to think beyond themselves. Even the smallest seed planted today can grow into a mighty tree for the generations to come. Think about how the decisions you make today affect not just your life, but the lives of those who come after you. When you manage your money wisely, when you invest in your knowledge, when you nurture your character, you're building a ripple effect. Your legacy can be a story of growth, resilience, and success that inspires others long after you're gone. And remember, legacy isn't only about family. It's about the impact you leave on your community, your workplace, and the world. Your ideas, your generosity, your values can shape lives in ways you might never fully see. So I challenge you, start thinking like a legacy builder today. Ask yourself, quote, what will outlast me? What am I creating that will continue to grow and benefit others long after I'm gone? Make choices with that vision in mind. Plant seeds of wisdom, assets, and habits that your future generations will thank you for. Legacy is not something you wait to build. It's something you live every day. Create a legacy that lasts beyond a lifetime. One of the most powerful lessons I learned on my path to financial independence was the art of delaying gratification. It might sound simple, but it's one of the hardest things to master because it goes against the very nature of our impulses. The world around us tempts us constantly. Flashy ads, instant purchases, easy credit. But every time you say yes to an impulse buy, you're saying no to your future wealth. I remember when I was young and first earning some money, I had this urge to spend on things that gave me momentary pleasure, a new shirt, a fancy meal, or some gadget that promised excitement. But looking back, I realized those small impulses, repeated over and over, became leaks in my financial bucket. It wasn't until I learned to say no to those temptations that I started to see my savings grow and my wealth-building efforts take shape. Delaying gratification isn't about deprivation, it's about purpose. When you skip that daily coffee or decide against buying the latest gadget, you're not just saving a few dollars, you're redirecting that money into something bigger. Maybe it's investing in stocks, adding to your retirement fund, or building a side business. Each small sacrifice becomes a brick in the foundation of your financial future. It's important to start small because mastery comes through consistent practice. Maybe today you pass on a lunch out and bring your own meal. Tomorrow you choose not to buy that new jacket that's on sale. These aren't huge sacrifices, but when done consistently, they create a habit of conscious spending. And habits compound wealth, just like compound interest does. I recall a story of a man who tracked every impulse purchase for a month. He found that his small daily indulgences added up to thousands of dollars by year's end. Imagine what that money could do if invested wisely instead. The choice to delay gratification isn't just about money. It's about training your mind to focus on long-term goals rather than short-term pleasure. The wealthy don't see money as something to spend quickly. They see it as a tool to build freedom. That mindset shift is crucial. When you delay gratification, you build financial discipline, and discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement. Remember, you don't need to make huge sacrifices to change your financial future. One small step skipping a purchase here, saving a few dollars there adds up over time. It's the repeated no to impulse that becomes a yes to opportunity. So today, start asking yourself, before every purchase, is this spending aligned with my long-term goals? Could this money work harder for me if saved or invested? When you make those choices consciously, you're not just delaying gratification, you're actively creating wealth. Master the art of patience with your money, and you'll find that your future self will thank you. Wealth is built not just by how much you earn, but by how wisely you hold on to it and make it grow. True wealth begins with the power to say no today for a greater yes tomorrow. As we wrap up, remember this: your financial future is shaped by the choices you make today, by the mindset you adopt, and the habits you build. Wealth isn't an accident. It's the result of discipline, patience, and purposeful action. So I challenge you, start now. Commit to delaying gratification, focus on your long-term goals, and invest in yourself relentlessly. Small, consistent steps lead to extraordinary results. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Create it. Your journey to lasting wealth begins with a single decision. Make that decision now and watch your future transform.